All right, everybody, welcome back to the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast. And we'll have a presented by next week. I don't quite have it official yet, but yes, we do have a sponsor coming up, and I'm very excited about it. But we'll touch on that next week. But also, just want to throw this out there. This could be an R-rated segment or version of the podcast. So I just wanted to mention that. I mean, hey, it's not that people are isolated due to some virus and they could be or maybe not be drinking alcohol. I'm just throwing that out there just in case there are small children listening. In any case, I hope that you are all well, and I hope that it really doesn't matter what political persuasion you are. I hope that you are safe and you are doing the things necessary to stay safe in the eyes of this invisible enemy and everything else that is the coronavirus. And got word tonight that somebody that I know is personally affected by it now. So it's pretty crazy. And again, you are here not to listen to that, but to listen to us talk some Steelers. So that's what we're going to do. But again, just hope everybody's doing well out there. Joining me as usual is Ian from his lockdown location in Western PA. Ian, how's it going for you tonight?
Pretty good. Things are mostly closed down here. My family's in good shape. We're all healthy.
Good.
We've got plenty of beer and whiskey, so we're sticking through it.
Plenty of beer and whiskey. What about you and your wife? What about you guys? I mean, obviously the kids are going to drink all the beer and the whiskey. But you never know. It's. I mean, we just ended St. Patrick's Day.
I'll tell you what. Actually, I came home from work the day before St. Patrick's Day, and my 8-year-old asked me for a glass of whiskey to put in his leprechaun trap. So, my kids are plenty Scotch Irish, even though they've not tried whiskey yet. They are well aware of what whiskey is.
That is terrific. And out on the left coast is Ben, who well, shall we say, he's an essential person, and he's had a day, so he's already started imbibing, and who knows what that brings for him. Ben, how are you tonight?
Better now.
Better now. Yes, indeed he is. Let's just jump right into it. The Steelers have gotten their way through free agency, at least through technically tomorrow is a full week. You know, they have the legal tampering period from that Monday through Wednesday, and then you can start signing officially on Wednesday. And we're just about a week now. And, Ian, what's your general overall? We'll look at each of these guys, but just in the sense of, did they do more? Did they do less? What was your overall so far with the Steelers? Because they're not done, I don't think either, but just so far.
Yeah, I think they did a lot more than I was expecting them to. We talked about it last week that the new CBA that passed really allowed them some flexibility with extensions, or not extensions. Sorry, they haven't actually extended anyone's contract yet, but restructuring contracts of existing players. And they did a whole bunch within the first day or two to get cap room. And even with the guys they signed, they still have about $10 million in cap space, which in the grand scheme of what other teams in the league have isn't a lot, but for the Steelers, where we've been in recent years, $10 million is a lot of cap space. Now, before anyone gets any crazy ideas about going out and signing Jameis Winston or Cam Newton or anything with that $10 million, let's just clear this up that they're probably going to need about $3 to $4 million to sign their draft picks, and they usually like to have about between $3 and $5 million entering the season so that they're able to sign guys to replace injured players and things like that during the season. So you figure that probably takes up about, we'll say, $8 million to be generous, of that $10 million in space. So right now, actively, without an extension for Cam Hayward or any other deals getting done, we're probably looking at about, $2 million in spendable money for this year as far as the cap goes for the rest of free agency. So, maybe a couple minimum salary guys where, it won't count heavily against the cap, and the displacement of one of the bottom level players in the top 51 gets knocked down, that it doesn't really impact the cap all that much. But I wouldn't expect any major signings. That said, I was shocked by what Derek Watt got from us. He's probably now the second or third highest paid fullback in the league. Eric Ebron, I didn't think we'd be anywhere close to being in the market for him. But that signing, I was not a huge fan of it originally, but he clapped back on Andrew Filipponi on Twitter tonight, so he is now my new favorite Steeler.
He clapped back how? I missed this. Please explain.
Go ahead, Ian. Explain.
Let me. So, all right. For those who don't know, Andrew Filipponi, who goes by the Pony Express on Twitter, he is a
douche.
Yes, he is
a douche.
He is a personality commenter on 93.7 The Fan, which is Pittsburgh's local, one of our sports radio stations, and Pony is constantly wrong. He's known for basically getting every single prediction he's ever made incorrect, and that's putting it nicely.
Yeah, very nicely.
And so Pony tweeted earlier tonight, interesting quote from a longtime NFL scout on Eric Ebron. Quote, he's the opposite of Heath Miller. He doesn't block. He doesn't keep quiet. We could see fireworks, end quote. So Eric Ebron quote tweeted this and said, he must be great at his job, quote, longtime NFL scout, unquote. Congrats to him. And so, it was so. While I didn't initially like the signing, Eric Ebron is my new favorite Steeler for calling out the guy I affectionately call Pitt Bayless, because that's basically what he is. He's Pittsburgh's version of Skip Bayless.
He not only is he wrong about everything, but he also is a classic clickbaiter. He loves to just put stuff out that gets people to react.
He puts out garbage that he knows isn't true.
Absolutely, and I think
he tries to sell it as valid.
Yep.
Fuck that guy.
Yep. Ben, what was your overall reaction? Were you kind of with Ian in terms of just the overall activity, or did you expect this? Where are you?
No, I was surprised they made that much space. I really, really was. The Derek Watt deal, yes, Derek is now the second highest paid fullback in the league. He's a long way behind Kyle Juszczyk, but about $2 million a year. But he's the second highest paid fullback in the league now. I didn't love the signing, but it kind of depends on what they're going to do with him. The way I see it, they had some issues last year with the guy that they had staying healthy, and so they went out and they replaced him. And I feel really bad for Rosie Nix. We all love the guy, but I guess they made a decision that it was time, and they moved on. They're paying Watt a pretty penny. I did not like the Eric Ebron signing. A lot of fans loved it. I think when he drops 4 or 5 balls throughout the course of the preseason, he'll probably play a total of like a whole game, 4 quarters in the preseason, and he'll drop 4 or 5 balls. And at that point, Colbert and Tomlin will both get roasted for signing the guy because he drops the ball so often. He can't block a lick.
No,
he drops the ball a lot. But when he does have the ball in his hands in space, he's dangerous. He's scary dangerous. If the guy could catch consistently, he'd be making $12 million a year. Instead, he's making $6 million. So, it kind of is what it is. Derek Watt, we talked about. Steven Wisniewski. I like this signing. When it first happened, I
very
did
surprising.
Like it. It kind of was. He's got center experience. He's a better center than Finney was.
True.
He came really cheap. I mean, dirt cheap. He's been a backup lineman who's started a lot of games the last few years because the guys in front of him got injured. I wouldn't call him a great player. He does have a little more junk in the trunk to anchor as a pass blocker by comparison to Finney. Yep. He's not as good. He's not as fleet of foot. He's not going to be a good puller like Finney was, but he is a better center. So all in all, this is a pretty good signing, and it's for less than half the price that Finney got on the open market with Seattle. It really is a pretty good trade. I didn't like it initially, and Ian was like, no, he's actually pretty good. I was like, whatever. But, yeah, when I found out what they signed him for, I was like, yeah, that's a really good value signing. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just, I'm kind of backtracking here. I whenever I look at signings of a free agent variety, I kind of, I think about Ebron. Okay, this was a guy that was drafted in the first round to Detroit, and the Lions let him go. He goes to Indianapolis, and the Colts let him go. Okay, there's obviously something there, and you guys already kind of hit on it. He doesn't catch the ball consistently enough, and he doesn't block well. And I mean, there's a reason you get released from these teams, because if you did either of those things exceptionally well, you're probably not getting released. And I agree with you. He's terrific when he gets the ball in his hands. I mean, the guy runs like a 4.6 40. At his size, he's got a great radius. It's just, can he catch the ball consistently? And to this point in his career, he really hasn't. That's my concern with him. Do I appreciate the fact that the Steelers addressed an area of need? Yes. And do I have an option? No, because I think he came as about affordable as they were going to be able to get at tight end. So I'm hopeful. I'm always hopeful with these, but I have tremendous concerns with him. Now, I have not heard, Ian, I've not heard anything about him either in Detroit or Indianapolis about off-field stuff or being too active on social media. I am a little surprised at how active he's been, but I haven't heard any negatives. So hopefully this is just what he does and leaves it at that. Have you seen anything else?
The basics that I've heard is that he's a guy who wants to be on the field and wants to get the ball thrown his way. So, I mean, you could call that a little bit of that sort of diva receiver mentality.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Indianapolis was giving a lot of snaps and they gave a lot of money to Jack Doyle last year too, who had kind of surpassed Ebron on the depth chart a little bit. So I can kind of understand why they had a mutual parting of ways there, that Indy was already throwing money at another tight end and didn't want to pay a second one. The one other thing to consider in this whole thing is that next year is the last year of Vance McDonald's contract. And he does, since it was a contract done by San Francisco and not by Pittsburgh, there are team options in there. So the Steelers kind of have a team option for next year and could potentially save a little over $5 million against the cap if they're able to. If they don't pick up the option. Then they save about $5.2 million against the cap. So, potentially looking at that next year, there is an escalator in Ebron's contract, but also, if he performs well this year, he could step into that number one role next year if they get rid of Vance, or they could have both of them again for a second year if they both perform well together. I think that we're probably going to see a lot more two tight end sets, although Ebron's the kind of guy who, like you said, he can run down the field, he can stretch the seam, and when he gets the ball in his hand, he's dangerous. So they have two tight ends now that can get down the field and really stretch the linebackers down the seam. So it'll be interesting to see if they try and attack vertically, and that's really something that was missing last year in the offense. Granted, we had Captain Checkdown and Mason Rudolph, and then Doc Hodges was what he was, but they really didn't have anyone that they felt comfortable trying to really stretch the field with consistently, especially over the middle. And now they'll have two of those kind of guys between Vance and Ebron.
So Ben, and we'll talk about this towards the end of the show, but I'm just going to jump on it now since I'm thinking about it. Given what Ian just said about Vance McDonald's contract status maybe for next year, does that take tight end off the board as far as the draft this year, or do you possibly see a tight end still being taken?
Maybe. I don't think you see a tight end taken high at this point, given the investment they have in those two guys. And I don't think that Ebron is necessarily going to be the backup tight end this year either. They're paying him more than they're paying Vance this year.
Yeah.
And they're two different players. They're entirely different players. So it depends on the set. It depends on what you're trying to do. You're not going to put Ebron in there and make him an inline blocker.
No,
because
no way.
Frankly, he's even worse at it than Xavier Grimble, and he sucks. So he does. He's terrible.
He does.
So,
I know.
I just don't see that happening very often. If they do something like that, it's going to be where they put him out in the slot and then bring him in and have him take out in outside linebacker. Surprise, boom. It's not going to be where he's set directly outside the tackle and he's trying to seal off the defensive end. But it makes things interesting. As Ian outlined, they have a couple of guys that can stretch the field up the seam, especially Ebron.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, then the other side of that though is he's going to drop a lot of balls, and people. This is something I was thinking about when you guys were talking. There's very little nuance with the fans. It's either a fantastic signing or it's the worst signing ever. There's nothing in between. And there's a whole lot of gray area in there. But the thing with Ebron is you have to accept the bad with the good. He's going to have some good games and he's going to do some good things. And then the next week, he's going to drop 3 balls and you're going to hate him. And, it's not all good or all bad. It's not all wonderful and rosy and sunshiny or all doom and gloom. You've got to see all the stuff in the middle. That's the only point I'm trying to make here. And with fans, that just doesn't seem to translate. It's either fantastic, wonderful, or you're terrible. You suck. Terrible signing. I wish we hadn't done that. And you just got to see more.
Vance McDonald came aboard with kind of a similar reputation as a guy who dropped some very catchable balls, and
not that many.
No, not to that extent, but he did. I don't know. I guess in the NFL these days, there are very, very few sure-handed guys as it is. But it'll be curious to me to see where that goes. I did have a chance to talk to. I think you guys know who Booga Peters is. He's a blogger and big Los Angeles Charger fan. We chatted this week a little bit about Derek Watt, and his overwhelming comments were, "You're just going to love him. He's your typical Watt. He's great in the locker room. He's great with the fans. I mean, he's going to be an instant fan favorite." But we talked about how do you use him because is he your traditional fullback? What does he offer? And he was really complimentary of Watt's very deceptive speed. Said he's much faster than he looks, and he pulls away from guys, and at the same time has an ability to churn out a yard when you need it on a 3rd and short. He burrows really well, does a good job. So I'm excited about it. I agree with you guys, and Ian, you pointed that out, that it's a big hunk of money that I never saw coming. But isn't it fair to say that they're not just looking at him offensively, but I mean, he's going to step right in and be on literally every special teams unit as well?
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
I mean, he already kind of endeared himself to the fans by his Instagram post wearing all Pittsburgh stuff. And
he gets it. And it's kind of funny. He's making significantly more money than his brother is right now. And they've had a few good shots at each other via social media that Derek's going to have to pay right now, because as soon as TJ gets the big contract, he'll be the one paying for a long, long time. Ben, what did you think about, first of all, I was stunned that we made a trade with the Baltimore Ravens. I never dreamed in a million years that would happen, but
that was a good trade.
Did. Yeah, as it turns out, I think it's a very good trade. The Steelers and the Ravens, they swap 2021 draft picks. We send them a 5th. They send us a 7th, and they also send us defensive lineman Chris Wormley. What were your overall thoughts on it?
I like Wormley. He's only got 1 year left on his deal. That's the only downside to this trade at all, is that he's only got he's got 1 year left. Yeah. And if they don't extend him, they basically traded a 5 for a 7, and got 1 year of service out of the guy. So they'll at least get 1 year out of him. I think he's a guy who's going to come in and kind of take over where, not so much where Hargrave left off. But he'll play a little bit of nose, and he'll back up the defensive tackles, and I guess technically Tuitt's an end by name, but he's a tackle most of the formations. And he'll do he'll play a key role on about 10 or 12 snaps a game. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Kind of what Hargrave used to do. I think he can play 3-tech. I'm not overwhelmed by the thought of him playing nose, but I think in some formations he's going to have to play nose tackle because the only other option they got right now is Dan McCullers, and Bugs is definitely not a nose tackle. So,
right.
They don't really have a whole heck of a lot of choice there, but it's a really nice depth acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
And he was superfluous in Baltimore at that point. And so they basically said, hey, what's the best we can get for this guy? Because we're going to have to release him. And it worked out that the Steelers had the best offer. So they took it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I like it. Ian, what was your overall take on it?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Ben. I think he kind of slots into that defensive line rotation, and really considering that we play in our nickel package with only 2 defensive linemen for 75% of our snaps, it's not really a huge deal to consider who's going to be playing nose, since we don't play that much at all. Actually, last year we probably played more one defensive lineman, especially after Tuitt got hurt, where it was just Cam in there, and 5 linebackers or 4 linebackers and a bunch of defensive backs than we did, with our traditional 3. But the rotation is going to be Cam Hayward and Stephon Tuitt are your starters and your top 2, and then Tyson Alualu is your number 3 guy who can fill in at either spot or rotate in at both spots when they go to nickel. And then the 4th guy in the rotation, this was kind of where Hargrave had stepped in last year, was Hargrave was not only the starting nose tackle, but had finally gotten used to or figured out the calls for how to play in the nickel alignment too. So they were able to actually get more snaps out of him last year to play that 4th role in the rotation for the nickel package. So I think that's mostly where Wormley fits in, is that 4th rotational role in the nickel package. And then, maybe they do keep McCullers, which I don't know how they keep him at, $1 million+ that they could save against the cap if they get rid of him. But I got to think they're going to either draft a nose tackle in a later round or pick one up as an undrafted free agent. True nose tackles really aren't a hot commodity anymore.
No.
Not many teams use them. So those guys will be available later on in the draft that they could be had. The defensive tackles or the interior guys who are going to become the high draft picks now are the athletic guys that can get after the quarterback. Aaron Donald's a freak player. But to compare anyone to him is doing him an injustice. But guys who could be potentially of that mold, that an interior lineman that can push the pocket and rush the passer is the guys who are going to go higher in the draft, and your more traditional run pluggers are going to fall because there's not that much use for them anymore. So if the Steelers want a traditional nose tackle, they can definitely find one either on day 3 or as an undrafted free agent.
And it's funny.
Something to bear in mind real quickly is that Alualu is 32, and he's in the last year of his deal also. And Wormley is 26. So I tend to wonder how interchangeable those guys are going to be. I mean, Alualu can play nose. It's probably not his best position anymore, but he can play nose. And Wormley, could play nose too, but that's not really where I would put him either. He just doesn't have enough sand in his pants to play nose tackle. He's too tall.
He is.
But
McCullers is like 6'8".
Yeah, but he's also like 400 pounds.
Yeah, I think he's a nose in the sense that nobody can move him.
Right.
Well, he
McCullers
can't move himself either.
To move. He can't move. Yeah, he can't move himself either, which is why he gets in his teammates' way. But I tend to wonder if Wormley doesn't, over the course of the season, progress from the number 4 defensive lineman to the number 3 defensive lineman.
Yeah,
and Tyson Alualu, it's bid goodbye at the end of the year. And they say to Chris Wormley, hey, we want you to stay. Here's the deal we're willing to offer you. It wouldn't be a terrible idea to go ahead and extend him before the year, but I don't think they will, because that's not what the Steelers do.
True.
Yeah, they're going to want to see him play first.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it is a good thought. I mean, as the season progresses, I can see that unfolding based on what you laid out with the contracts. What I would like to do here, guys, is I'm basically just going to shut up and allow you guys to talk about this because it's well above my pay grade. We had Bill on Twitter, who, thank you, Bill, listens to the podcast and stuff, and was wondering if you guys would discuss the comp picks for 2021. Now, I know that's getting ahead of things here a little bit, but I think it's something good to discuss simply because of the number of players that we have had leave and go to other teams. Okay. So we have had, Javon Hargrave and BJ Finney, and Artie Burns, Sean Davis. We've had a number of guys move on. And again, this is I don't get into the number stuff very much, so this is where I'll let you guys discuss this a bit. So, Ian, go ahead and start us off. Where are we at when it comes to looking at this 2021 comp pick formula stuff?
So there were a few changes to the comp pick formula that happened with the new CBA, and to keep things from getting overly complicated, I won't go into all those.
Yeah,
but the general formula of the guys you sign versus the guys you lose is still in effect. So guys that were true unrestricted free agents are the only ones that count towards the signings. Guys that you sign that were actually cut by another team don't count, which is how teams like the Ravens and the Patriots over time have really been able to stack up on the number of comp picks because they sign guys who are cut by other teams, not true unrestricted free agents. So
let's touch real quickly on the option thing that was in Vance McDonald's contract.
Okay. Yeah. Go ahead, Ben. You can cover that if you want.
Oh, okay. Basically, you were talking about the only free agents that count are actual true free agents, and that's true. But before, the reason that teams had those options in there was it was a way to get around the not a true free agent rule. And they would fail to exercise the options on players, and they would get comp picks for it. So basically, it was a mechanism that teams included it in the contracts to get themselves some extra comp picks. Okay, the NFL got rid of it even before the CBA was finalized. So those guys don't count either. If the Steelers had gone ahead and not exercised Vance McDonald's option this year, they would have gotten nothing. It's the same as cutting him, basically.
Okay.
Ian, please go on. I'm sorry to have cut you off.
No, okay. So on the whole, we've signed 3 free agents that were, unrestricted free agents. We talked about them: Eric Ebron, Derek Watt, Stefan Wisniewski.
Right.
We've lost 6 guys so far: Javon Hargrave, Sean Davis, BJ Finney, Tyler Matakevich, Nick Vanette, and Artie Burns, that were true unrestricted free agents. Burns, we haven't seen the details of his contract yet, so that one's kind of up in the air. We're not really sure if that's going to fall into the comp pick formula. There are only 32 compensatory picks that are awarded by the NFL. So, you look at the 32 largest contracts that are awarded, which means that Stefan Wisniewski, considering he only signed for an average of about $1.4 million, may or may not count actually against.
Probably not.
Probably not. But we'll see. Because there are other factors that count in with playing time and postseason awards and other things that get factored in at a later point in time. But at this point, probably not with the estimate. So we're probably looking at 3 or 4 comp picks, depending on how Artie Burns' contract with Chicago factors out. Eric Ebron and Sean Davis's contracts were about equal. Derek Watt and Nick Vanette's contracts were essentially equals. So you're really looking at, we lost Hargrave, we lost Finney, we lost Matakevich, and then depending on how Burns counts in. So, probably looking at somewhere between a 3 and a 5 for Hargrave. We'll estimate around a 4 probably.
5?
Finney
won't be a 5.
No, it won't be a 5. You're right.
3 or a 4.
All right, 3 or 4. He signed for $13 million. You're right. I was being generous. All right.
Yeah, very.
Don't be generous, Ian.
It'll be the highest 4 or it'll be the lowest 3. One of the two. And obviously we're rooting for the lowest 3 rather.
Right. Because remember, comp picks happen at the end of a round, so the lowest 3rd round pick would still be about the beginning of the 4th round, whereas the highest 4th round pick would be the beginning of the 5th round, essentially the end of the 4th round. So there is a 32 pick difference there, depending on where that pick gets awarded. And then Finney and Matakevich, they both signed for around $4 million a year, so they're probably in the 6th round range. I would guess.
They are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I mean, Finney's borderline. He's like right there at the cutoff. He could be a 7, but he might be a 6. So that's another one where we got to root for the 6 because it's like Ian just pointed out. It's 32 picks difference between like the lowest 6 and the first 7.
Speaking of Finney, why?
And that's the thing where, if I mark 1 second,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. That's the thing where like the other factors, the playing time, the postseason awards.
Yeah.
Things, I mean, Finney's not going to make the Pro Bowl, but the playing time factor could come into play.
You never know. Finney. Well, no, he's not. Never mind. Maybe he plays a lot of special teams, but I'm thinking of Matakevich. Matakevich could make the Pro Bowl as a special teamer. That would not shock me.
Right. So something like that, those things get factored into the comp pick formula as well, that we don't know those right now. So, but the playing time could be a big deciding factor sort of between those ones that are on the cusp.
Well,
Absolutely.
Just real quick, speaking of Finney, and I know Ben for sure, but Ian, were you just as surprised as me? I thought Finney was going to fetch a little bit larger number on the open market. Were you guys surprised by that?
A little bit. Yeah.
Yes, I was.
I must have overvalued him. I thought he was.
I did too. I did too.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to get like Chris Hubbard money, like $7 million a year, 3 years, $7 million, and he got 2 years at $4 million. So, hey.
Yeah, it is what it is. So as far as this, and don't forget too, I think was last year the first year that comp picks could be traded.
I think 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago? Okay, so
it was a recent change though. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So that still exists. So
yes.
Hopefully that answers Bill's question. Ben, did you want to add in on the comp pick stuff? I didn't let you really get a shot at that.
No, I mean, I think the Steelers are probably going to get, at this point, 3 comp picks, potentially 4 if Artie Burns' deal turns out to be, worth more than $2 million. I doubt it is.
Yeah,
as sparingly as Artie played the last couple of years in Pittsburgh, I don't think he's going to get a ton of money. And as we've discussed before on this podcast, I feel bad for Artie. He had a lot on his plate. He's a parent to his own children and also a parent to his younger brothers. Had a lot going on. Wasn't really well suited toward what the Steelers were asking him to do. He's more of a bump and run corner. They wanted him to play a lot of zone and bump and run. He did his best to learn it. He also was saddled, with having to play with Mike Mitchell, who it seems very clear, empirically, just looking at what's happened in the defense since Mitchell left, communication has become less and less and less of an issue.
Totally agree.
Without Mitchell back there calling the coverages. So, you feel bad and you wonder what would have been had he been, even with Sean Davis for a couple of years as a free safety, he was better at it than Mitchell was. And Minka, like were there blown covers last year at all? Did that happen? Was that a thing? I don't remember it at all. Never.
Like maybe a handful of times.
Not many.
There were a couple
13 weeks.
There were a couple in the Seattle game. But that was Cam Kelly.
Yeah, it's pre-Minka.
Yeah, exactly. Dumbass rookie.
So with the Steelers adding,
one other thing I'll add on comp picks is that the Steelers in the past, as part of sort of their draft strategy, have used sort of known comp picks to be willing to trade. So they were willing to trade a 3rd round pick in 2020 last year as part of the package to help them move up for Devin Bush, because they knew they were going to get a 3rd round comp pick for Le'Veon Bell. So,
I wish they would trade those comp picks instead.
that would make more sense. Well, the thing is, you can't trade the comp picks until you know what they are.
Well, you can
announced. Well,
you can, but you can put a qualifier in the trade that it's got to be at least this high a pick, right?
Yeah.
So you can say to the team, "We're going to give you our 3, but we're going to give you our lowest 3." Well, if you only get 1 3, that's your lowest 3. So that's the one that the other team gets. That's the gamble the other team makes. If you get a 4 instead of a third, well, they get your third. They don't get your comp third.
Right.
So in our last few minutes here today, guys, we've seen us add an interior offensive lineman. We've seen us add a defensive lineman. We've added a fullback special teams guru, and of course a tight end. How does this change the Steelers' approach to the draft? Does it jumble up some things in terms of maybe what they had as a priority 2 weeks ago? Now it's different. I mean, does it change anything?
Yes. Now offensive line is a higher priority.
Yeah. I agree.
No, I think it is, but people will disagree with me, and that's totally fine. I think what's probably going to happen is it's going to be the best offensive player available who is not a tight end or a quarterback.
Yeah.
In the second round. Now, don't get me wrong. If something ridiculous happens and Justin Herbert falls to 49, the Steelers are taking him. They'd be idiots not to.
Right.
But that isn't going to happen. Okay.
Right.
Right. There's an outside chance they might take a tight end, and I'd love it because then that would mean that Zach Gentry falls even further in the depth chart. But I don't see it happening. And by the way, I'm out of whiskey, so we need to hurry up.
Oh, boy, that's a
problem. But I just think ideally it's an offensive lineman. That's my opinion. But it could be a running back. It really could. It could be a wide receiver. They love their wide receivers, man.
Absolutely.
If they see a wide receiver there that they're like, oh yeah, we got a first round grade on that guy, they're taking him. That's how
guy that can stretch the field too.
Juju.
Yeah.
Remember when they drafted Juju? We were like, "Oh, wide receiver? Why'd you do that? Oh God,
Yep.
Hell no! That guy was worth a first round pick, much less a second. If they see value in the second round, they are going to take him. Yep. And if they're real good at scouting wide receivers, if they see value at 49 and in the form of a first round grade at wide receiver or running back or anything else, they're gonna take that guy at 49.
Yeah,
so
what they do.
It is what it is. I got a feeling we're gonna be surprised by it. It wouldn't shock me also if it's an edge player, inside linebacker could be that too.
Yep.
The depth there is for shit right now. It really is. You got starters, and then you got nothing. You got a bunch of guys with no experience behind them. And the young guys, like we talked about last week, young guys got to step up. So I'm going to end it right there.
Yeah. Ian, what do you think? How does it change it?
I agree with Ben. I think it lessens the need for a tight end. We still probably need a third tight end. We really could.
Wait. You're saying Zach Gentry is not a third tight end?
Go.
No.
So what are you saying, Ian?
He's tall.
He is tall, and he
runs. A former quarterback.
He's tall, and he runs like he's wearing concrete shoes that he's about to get thrown to the bottom of Lake Michigan.
But how about his blocking? I mean, it's I can't really block either.
Yeah.
Well,
so
those are problems.
But he runs really good. No, he doesn't run good routes. But he's
tall.
He's tall.
He's tall. Yeah.
He's tall.
He's got big hands, and he's tall.
Red zone target.
Yeah. So really, I mean, I'd say the fourth and fifth wide receiver positions are still open. Third tight end is open. One or two offensive line spots are open. Running backs, kind of a wide open competition behind James Conner. Anything could kind of happen there. On defense, probably need another defensive lineman. We talked about nose tackle earlier tonight. We need both an outside and an inside linebacker, at least one, maybe two. Safeties, we might need two more of those, or you could always go for another corner too. So I mean, it's really wide open.
It is.
We need a new punter too, but we absolutely should not draft a punter.
Nope.
So
what about a long snapper? How about a long snapper?
We signed Cam candidate. We're fine.
How about a long snapper at 49 though? I mean, you really that would be a wild card right there.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God! People would lose their minds.
And real quickly,
one other note.
Yeah, go ahead, Ian.
Yeah, one other thing I'll note is that tonight, probably about an hour or so before we recorded, it came out that the NFL General Manager Subcommittee unanimously recommended that the commissioner push back the date of the draft. So we'll see where that goes. For now, the NFL is still sticking with their April 23rd date, which is about a month away. So as of right now, we'll plan on, having a month until the draft, but that's subject to change moving forward.
I mean, basically what they're going to do is they're going to have satellite camera crews recording guys when they get drafted and their expressions and them hugging their families and everything else, and they're going to announce the names, and it'll be fine. I'm really not worried about it, honestly. I just want the draft to get here already and be done. I don't know about you guys. I'm already sick of it.
I once I get about 3 weeks out from the combine, that's where I'm at too. I just want, of course, we would also have pro days to talk about and everything else. But anyway, we're going to get out of here for this edition of the show. And once again, please, if you get a moment, leave a rating, review, whatever, on the platform that you listen to us on. And feel free to hit us up, as Bill did, on Twitter or whatever, and shoot us questions or comments, whatever. We'll be glad to address them on the very next show. But I guess we'll get out of here and see where things go for the next week. And everybody stay safe and don't, keep that social distancing, ladies and gentlemen. Social distancing, very important these days. And anyway, for Ian and for Ben, this is Steel Dad signing off on the Steel City Blitz Steelers podcast. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.